Today, let's talk about Nepal's red lines. Interestingly, a cursory search, a Google search for Nepal's red lines, it did not yield much. It featured my recent article on People's Review. I was pleasantly surprised to know that it has found a place. Uh, what does it indicate? What does this lack of materials about Nepal's red lines indicate? Most probably, it points that we are not serious about the red lines of our motherland, our fatherland, our ancestral land. Isn't this worrying a bit in terms of national security, in terms of territorial integrity, in terms of inviolability of our international borders? I ask this open question to experts of repute. So let's continue with these red lines. I sincerely hope that this talk of Nepal's red lines, I hope it will not act as a red rag to a bull, to a raging bull, or a couple of bulls out there. The word red line itself rings alarm bells, doesn't it? But what does it actually mean? It means a limit or a boundary which should not be crossed. Why so? You may wonder. Because across this line lies the territory that's full of risks. Chances are that the territory does not even belong to you. So, what happens if someone crosses the line? Let's time travel to the Treta Yuga to get possible answers. Let's return to the age of the Ramayana. Ram, the eldest son of Dasharath and the natural successor to the throne of Ayodhya, is in a 12-year exile into the woods. This as a result of some royal conspiracy. Accompanying Ram are his wife Sita and brother Laxman. In the forest, life isn't easy. There you are on your own, whether you are a royal or a lesser mortal. The two royals often go deep into the woods. What for? In search of edibles. On a fateful day, with his elder brother already deep into the woods, Prince Laxman follows the suit, leaving Sita to fend for herself. Why? Upon repeated proddings from Sita, who thinks she just heard her husband crying for help. Before leaving, Laxman draws a line as a safety measure, cautioning his sister-in-law not to cross that line for the sake of her own safety. In a while, a hermit appears at the hut. Moved, Sita shows up and seeks to give the arms away from a distance, heeding Laxman's words of caution. But the hermit, he won't accept the offerings from a bit afar. He takes it as a mark of disrespect and threatens to curse Sita if she does not cross the line. But when Sita crosses the line, the hermit he shows his true colors and kidnaps her. It's already late when Sita realizes that the hermit is none other than her husband's arch enemy, Ravan. The Ramayana hints that the crown prince of Ayodhya had also crossed what is known these days as a red line. The Ramayana it hints that the crown prince of Ayodhya had also crossed what is known these days as a red line. This happened during a chance encounter between Ram, Laxman, and Ravan's sister Surpanakha. What happened exactly? Surpanakha asked Ram to marry her. The Ramayana story goes. In turn, Ram made a mockery of her. He ordered brother Laxman to have her nose cut. Such an act, it would have been quite unbecoming of lesser mortals, leave alone the heir to the throne of Ayodhya. This act of disrespect, it sowed the seeds of Ram-Ravan enmity. This enmity culminated in the battle between the armies of Ram and Ravan after the abduction of Sita. This war, this battle led to the ravaging of Lanka. This led to the death of Ravan and his brother Kumbhakarna. The line that Laxman drew for the safety of Sita. We just talked about that line. Remember that line Laxman drew while heading for the forest. That line was the safety of Sita. That line is called Laxman Rekha, a red line no less. Since that incident of the Treta Yug, since that incident of the Ramayana era, planet Earth has seen drawing of quite a lot of red lines in violation of many of those lines. With human blood, of course. Red lines, they may be visible, they may be invisible. People have red lines. So do societies and countries. These lines are often defined by the laws of the land as well as international conventions. International borders between countries, they are an example of red lines. What are Nepal's red lines? To be exact, what are Nepal's red lines vis-a-vis the immediate neighborhood and beyond? For example, how deep, how high, and how wide we should go as a nation in terms of our relations with our southern neighbor. Should esteemed diplomats from the neighbor in question should they have unfettered access to our political leadership, our top political leadership, our bureaucracy? Should that be the way in which we conduct our relations, our diplomatic relations with the southern neighbor? It's a robust economy. It's one of the largest military forces in the country. It's a rising hyperpower and a superpower to be. Is that the way we should be conducting our relations with such a mighty country? Strictly in terms of reciprocity, do our men in Delhi, do they get to meet top political leadership of the host country and convey our national security concerns and other concerns of which there is no doubt? And should our open border, marked by open and festering winds, should it not act as a red line vis-a-vis our relations with the southern neighbor? What about the winds like the Susta? What about the Limpiadhura, Kalapani, Lipulek region, where Nepal has no control over 400 square kilometers of her territory? India has been occupying that stretch of land, that parcel of land since 1962. That is what Nepal has been saying all along. And what about Pashupatinagar, Manebhanjang? What about Thori, Sandakpur, and Maheshpur? What about the Mahakali riverbanks? Recent media reports point that India is unilaterally constructing an embankment. It has been constructing an embankment along the Mahakali in Bangebagar, Tadeldhura. This act, it will further change the course of the river and put Nepali territories in increased peril. This act will further impinge upon Nepal's national sovereignty and territorial integrity. After marathon diplomatic efforts, this act, India has halted the embankment construction, but there is no guarantee that this act will not resume in coming days. In fact, India has been resorting to this kind of modus operandi for quite some time. Worryingly, such acts on the part of India, they have become the norm rather than the exception. Thanks to deafening silence on the part of Nepal's political leadership, Nepal's bureaucracy, and Nepal's diplomatic corps. Does the Nepali state not see blatant violation of red lines in these places, whether it's in the Kalapani, Lipulek, Limpiadhura region, whether it's in Susta or a number of other places along the border? In fact, almost all districts along the Nepal India border have disputes, several disputes. Does Nepal even bother to send a diplomatic note to their man in Kathmandu protesting blatant violation of the border? Once in a while, it does, but it turns out to be an act that is too little and too late, that kind of thing. And what about the threat? What about the threat to Nepal's national security as a result as a result of unregulated entry of people through an open border with thin security presence of Nepal. What about the entry of people and suspicious elements to Nepal via Indian territories? How long will these wounds take to heal, if at all? Is the Nepali state taking initiatives that will do the healing? What use do our state machineries like political parties, diplomatic corps, intelligence agencies, military, police, and paramilitary forces have if they cannot ensure inviolability of our borders? Above all, what use is a government if it cannot protect a country? Our diplomatic communications, have you read some of them? Have you noticed their tone, their language? These communications often stress the need to further strengthen our bilateral relations and take them to new heights. What further measures will take these ties atop the Sagarmatha? Will these measures not further weaken Nepal's national sovereignty, already weakened through several controversial deals and treaties like the 1950s Peace and Friendship Treaty, the Kosi Agreement of 1950s, the Mahakali Treaty of the 1990s, and the Kosi Agreement, among others. What are our red lines vis-a-vis relations with our northern neighbor? Will the bilateral relations will they become great as the Great Wall of China if we give a go ahead for the construction of some cross-border connectivity projects? The projects that will link, that will connect China with South Asia via the via Nepali territories. Will they strengthen further? Will these ties between our two countries, that is Nepal and China, will these ties strengthen further if we continue to provide for Tibetan refugees as they come? Will they reach new heights if we continue to accept displaced populations from Myanmar? Will our let it be attitude towards the 40-point India China agreement? Will this agreement to facilitate cross border trade through the Lipu Lake Pass do the trick? Will it further strengthen Nepal China relations? Or will our unwavering support for the One China policy will it be enough? Will our unwavering support for the One China policy, repeated time and time again, will it be enough to strengthen the bilateral relations? And what about the sole superpower? Has the Parliament's nod for the Millennium Challenge Corporation Compact taken bilateral relations to desired heights? Or will some other deals take it atop? There are a myriad questions. And what about the United Kingdom? How many wars, how many of our soldiers, and how many Victoria Crosses will it take to make Nepal UK relations unsinkable, rock solid, or whatever? And what about Europe as a whole? What measures will it take for Nepal to address the concerns of the entire continent? How many projects, social engineering or otherwise, how many projects and how many NGOs will be able to do this job? And how long will it take? And at what costs for Nepal? What about our ties with the international government, the international governing body? That is none other than the behemoth called the United Nations. Should the world body, a body that is turning into the League of Nations of the 21st century, this due to the super powerful permanent members. Should the world body keep mum even when relatively small countries like Nepal face a serious existential threat? The government in the making ought to think long and hard. It ought to think quite seriously because the answers are not blowing in the wind. With this remark, I wrap up this edition of Soft Talk. This is an initiative towards citizen journalism, a strain of journalism that is free from vested interests. We ask you to promote this initiative so that we can be your true voice. We ask you to subscribe to this channel, comment on our presentation, and press that like button. Your support, it means an awful lot to us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.